Welcome to Relaxing Historian Journey channel. Tonight we step into a distant northern village of ancient China where winter does not simply arrive but settles in like a quiet, patient force that reshapes everything around you. Have you ever wondered how people endured a season so cold it could still the breath in your chest? Or how entire communities survived months when the land itself seemed to withdraw its generosity? Here, survival is not a single act of strength, but a rhythm of small, careful choices, repeated day after day. So before you settle into the story, take a second to like the video and hit subscribe, and if you feel comfortable, share your location and local time in the comments below. It is always comforting to know where in the world you are listening from. Now dim the lights. You stand at the edge of the village as the first true frost settles across the fields. The air carries a faint metallic sharpness, the kind that brushes against your lungs and lingers there for a moment longer than expected. Your breath rises in soft clouds drifting upward before dissolving into the pale morning light. The land feels still, not empty but waking. Waiting, the fields stretch out before you, their surfaces hardened by the night's cold. Each step you take produces a faint crunch beneath your feet, the brittle remains of autumn grasses now locked in place by frost. The sound is small, yet it echoes in the quiet as if the entire landscape is listening. You pull your outer layer tighter around your body, noticing how the cold finds even the smallest openings. It slips through fabric and touches your skin with a steady persistence, not painful yet, but insistent. You quickly understand that this is only the beginning. A widely accepted understanding among historians is that winter survival in northern Chinese villages depended heavily on preparation that began long before the first frost appeared. The cold season was never a surprise. It was an expected arrival, one that shaped every decision made during the warmer months. You can feel that preparation here, even now. You turn toward the village where low, earth-toned homes sit close together, their shape softened by the pale light. Smoke rises gently from a few chimneys, thin lines that drift upward and then flatten as they meet the cold air. The scent reaches you slowly, a mixture of burning wood and dried plant matter, faint but reassuring. It smells like warmth. You walk forward, your pace measured, your body adjusting to the firmness of the ground beneath you. The village path is narrow, worn by years of footsteps and now edged with a thin layer of frost that glitters softly in the light. As you move closer, you begin to hear subtle sounds. A door opening, footsteps shifting against packed earth, the quiet murmur of voices low and steady. Life continues here even as the cold settles in. You pass by a stack of firewood arranged neatly beside one of the homes. Each piece is cut to a similar length, stacked with care, protected from moisture. There is nothing casual about it. Every log represents warmth, and every decision about how to use it will matter in the days ahead. You reach out and touch one of the logs. It feels dry, cold, solid. You imagine how different it will feel once placed into a fire, how it will slowly release its stored energy into the room, becoming something entirely different. Here, transformation is essential. Nothing remains in its original state for long. A lesser-known detail recorded in some regional accounts suggests that villagers often developed personal systems for tracking fuel use, sometimes marking small notches on wooden beams to ensure they did not consume their reserves too quickly. It is a quiet form of discipline, almost invisible unless you know to look for it. You continue walking, your attention drawn to the homes themselves. Their walls are thick, made from packed earth and clay materials chosen not for beauty, but for their ability to resist the cold. The surfaces are slightly uneven, bearing the marks of hands that shaped them long ago. You place your palm against one wall. It feels cool, but not harsh. There is a subtle difference, a softness compared to the open air. Even now, before the deep winter sets in, the structure is already working, holding on to what little warmth it can gather. You pause for a moment, listening. The wind moves lightly across the village, brushing against the walls and slipping through narrow spaces between buildings. It carries with it the faint scent of dried crops stored nearby, a reminder of the season that has just passed. Harvest is over. Winter has begun. You notice a figure moving slowly along the path ahead, carrying a bundle of dried stalks tied together with simple cord. The motion is steady, unhurried, as if every step has already been considered. There is no wasted movement. Efficiency matters here, not in a hurried sense, but in a careful one. You follow at a respectful distance, observing how the bundle is carried close to the body, minimizing exposure to the cold air. Small details like this accumulate over time, each one reducing the strain placed on the body. It is subtle, but important. Some scholars have debated the extent to which communal knowledge shaped these behaviors, suggesting that many survival techniques were not formally taught, but absorbed through daily observation and repetition. You can see how that might be true. Nothing here is explained out loud, yet everything seems understood. You step aside as the figure reaches a doorway and disappears inside the wooden door, closing with a soft, solid sound. The moment it shuts, the faint warmth that had been escaping into the air is cut off completely. The boundary is clear. Inside and outside are different worlds. You continue along the path, your senses gradually sharpening as you adjust to the environment. The cold no longer feels like a sudden presence, but a constant one, something that surrounds you rather than confronts you. You breathe in slowly. The air feels clean, dry, almost weightless. And yet beneath that clarity there is a quiet pressure, a reminder that this environment demands attention. Carelessness here is not easily forgiven. You glance back toward the fields once more, noticing how the light has shifted slightly. The sun sits low in the sky, its warmth limited, its presence more symbolic than practical. It illuminates the land but does not change it. Not yet. You take another step forward, deeper into the village, aware that what you are witnessing is only the surface of a much larger system. Every object, every movement, every habit is part of a network designed to endure the months ahead. There is no single solution, only many small ones. You feel it in the way people move, in the way materials are arranged, in the way space is used. Survival here is not dramatic, it is quiet, steady and continuous. You pause again, allowing the moment to settle around you. The faint sounds of daily life continue weaving together into a gentle rhythm that contrasts with the stillness of the land beyond. It is almost peaceful. Almost, because beneath that calm there is an awareness shared by everyone here. The cold will deepen, the days will grow shorter, and everything you see now will be tested. You draw a slow breath, letting it fill your lungs before releasing it into the air. The vapor rises, then disappears, leaving no trace behind. Just like that. For now, you stand at the beginning where preparation meets reality, and where each quiet action begins to take on greater meaning. The village is ready, or as ready as it can be. And so are you. You wake into a morning that feels sharper than the one before, the air carrying a firmer edge that settles against your skin with quiet authority. It is not yet the deepest cold of winter, but something has shifted. You can feel it immediately. The season is advancing. You step outside and notice how the village is already in motion. There is no sense of delay, no lingering softness in the pace of the day. People move with purpose, their actions guided by an awareness that time for now is still on their side. But not for long. The ground beneath your feet is harder today, the frost thicker, each step producing a clearer sound. It echoes slightly as you walk, a crisp rhythm that follows you along the narrow path. The sky above is pale and open, yet the light it provides feels distant, almost detached from the land below. You pull your clothing closer, adjusting the layers instinctively, and begin to follow the movement of the village. Preparation is everywhere. You see it first in the gathering of materials. Bundles of dried grasses are carried from storage areas toward homes, their faint earthy scent rising as they shift in the cold air. These are not just remnants of harvest. They are fuel, insulation and sometimes bedding. Nothing is wasted. A well-established observation among historians is that northern Chinese communities relied heavily on agricultural byproducts during winter, transforming what might seem like simple leftovers into essential resources for heat and survival. You watch as one villager kneels beside a stack of dried stalks, breaking them into smaller pieces with steady practice motions. The sound is soft but distinct, a series of gentle snaps that blend into the quiet background of the morning. Each piece is sorted and arranged with care, Order matters here. You move closer to one of the homes and notice the careful work being done along its outer walls. Thin layers of mud and straw are pressed into small gaps sealing cracks that might otherwise allow cold air to slip inside. The texture is rough beneath the hands that shape it, yet the movement is deliberate and precise. You reach out and touch a section that has just been repaired. It feels damp, cool, alive with intention. The smell of earth rises faintly grounding and familiar. It lingers in the air, mixing with the distant scent of smoke, creating a quiet sense of continuity between land and shelter. You step back and observe the wall as a whole. It is not perfect. Small variations remain, slight unevenness in the surface, subtle shifts in colour where fresh material meets older layers. But perfection is not the goal. Effectiveness is. A lesser-known detail from regional traditions suggests that some families would add ash from previous fires into the ceiling mixture, believing it improved insulation, while also carrying symbolic protection against harsh elements. It is a small addition, yet one that reflects both practical and cultural thinking. You continue walking, drawn toward a group of villagers gathered near a shared storage space. Wooden containers sit partially buried in the ground, their lids secured tightly. As one is opened, a faint rush of cold air escapes, carrying with it the scent of preserved vegetables. Sharp, salty, slightly sour. You watch as the contents are checked carefully. Each item is inspected not casually but with focused attention. Any sign of spoilage would matter. Any loss would be felt. Food is not simply consumed here. It is managed. Carefully, you notice how the containers are positioned partially underground to maintain a stable temperature, protected from both freezing extremes and sudden fluctuations. The earth itself becomes part of the storage system, offering a quiet form of protection. Some researchers continue to debate how widespread these semi-underground storage methods were across different regions, suggesting that local climate and soil conditions influenced their use more than any single cultural practice. As you stand here, it is easy to see how adaptable these communities must have been. You move on, your attention shifting toward the roofs of the homes. Thin layers of thatch and packed material sit atop each structure, and you can see villagers climbing carefully to inspect them. Loose sections are pressed down, reinforced, adjusted. Even the smallest opening could matter. A single gap, a single weakness. It could allow cold air to enter moisture to build warmth to escape. The margin for error narrows as winter approaches, and every detail becomes part of a larger system of defense. You pause and listen. The sounds are different here. Muted, softened by the cold air. Footsteps, steps, hands brushing against straw. Low voices exchanging brief words. There is no loud urgency, yet everything carries a quiet intensity, a shared understanding that these tasks cannot be delayed. You feel it in your own movements, a growing awareness. You adjust your stance, your posture, your pace. Without thinking, you begin to conserve energy to move more efficiently, to avoid unnecessary exposure to the cold. It happens gradually, almost without notice. The environment teaches you without seeking. You pass by another home where a door stands slightly open. Warm air slips out in a faint current, brushing against your face as you approach. It carries the scent of cooked grains, soft and comforting, mixed with the lingering presence of smoke. You step closer, just for a moment. The contrast is immediate. The warmth is not overwhelming, but it is enough to feel like relief. Your skin responds quickly, easing, relaxing, adjusting to the change. Then the door closes, and the warmth disappears. It is a simple reminder. Inside and outside remain separate. You continue along the path, noticing now how pathways themselves are maintained. Loose debris is cleared, surfaces are kept firm, ensuring that movement through the village remains steady, even as conditions worsen. A misstep here, a fall and injury could carry serious consequences. Even walking is part of survival. You take a slower step, then another, feeling the ground beneath you adjusting to its texture, its resistance, its subtle changes. You look up once more at the sky. The sun remains present, yet distant, its warmth unable to reach you in any meaningful way. It provides light, but little else. Still it matters. Even light matters. You begin to understand how survival is not built from large actions, but from a series of small, consistent adjustments. Each one reduces risk. Each one preserves energy. Each one extends the ability to endure. You feel a quiet respect growing within you. For the people, for their knowledge, for the systems they have built. There is no single moment when preparation is complete. It is ongoing, continuous, woven into every part of daily life. Even now, as you stand within the village, the work continues around you. Hands moving, materials shifting, spaces being shaped. You draw a slow breath, noticing how your body has already begun to adapt. The cold is still present, but it no longer feels unfamiliar. It has become something you move within rather than something you resist. For now, you take another step forward deeper into the rhythm of the village, aware that each action you witness is part of a larger pattern, one that will soon be tested by the full weight of winter. And preparation, you realize, is not about stopping the cold. It is about learning how to live with it. You find yourself drawn toward one of the homes, its doorway slightly open, inviting without intention. The air outside remains crisp and firm, pressing gently against your skin, while the space within promises something quieter, something held. You step inside. The transition is immediate, though subtle. The cold does not vanish, but it softens its sharpness, reduced as it meets the enclosed space. The air feels denser here, carrying faint traces of warmth that have gathered slowly over time. It is enough. The interior is dim, lit by a low fire set into a simple hearth. The glow spreads across the room in a muted amber tone, touching the walls and revealing their texture. Packed earth forms the structure, layered and shaped with care, its surface uneven yet solid. You move closer to the wall and rest your hand against it. It feels cool but steady, not biting, not shifting. There is a quiet strength in it, a sense that it holds more than it reveals. The thickness of the wall becomes clear as you press gently, realizing how much material separates you from the cold outside. A widely recognized principle in ancient northern Chinese architecture is the use of rammed earth construction, where layers of soil are compacted tightly to form dense insulating walls. This method does not eliminate the cold entirely, but it slows its movement, allowing warmth to remain longer within the space. You can feel that effect now. The room does not feel warm in a modern sense, but it feels protected. The difference is subtle yet meaningful. Outside, the cold surrounds you. Inside, it is kept at a distance. You take a few slow steps further in your eyes, adjusting to the low light. The floor beneath you is firm, packed, smooth by years of use. It holds a faint residual warmth, likely gathered from the fire and the presence of those who live here. The smell in the room is layered. Smoke, earth, cooked grains, a hint of dried herbs. It is not unpleasant. It is grounding a combination of elements that reflect both survival and routine. Each scent tells part of the story, each one tied to an action repeated many times before. You notice how the ceiling sits lower than expected, its beams close enough to create a sense of enclosure. This is not by accident. A smaller interior space is easier to warm, easier to maintain, easier to control. Space is managed carefully. You look toward a small opening near the roof where a thin line of smoke escapes into the air outside. It moves slowly, guided by the difference in temperature carrying with it the remnants of the fire's work. Even smoke has a path. A lesser-known architectural detail found in some regions suggests that homes were often oriented to reduce exposure to prevailing winter winds, with entrances placed strategically and walls reinforced on the most exposed sides. It is a quiet form of environmental awareness shaped not by theory but by lived experience. You begin to notice how little space is wasted. Tools are placed within easy reach, stored along the walls or hung from simple supports. Containers sit neatly arranged, their lids secured, their contents protected. Everything has a place. Everything serves a purpose. You move closer to the hearth, feeling the gentle rise of warmth as you approach. It is not intense, but it is steady, radiating outward in soft waves that reach your hands first, then your face. You extend your fingers toward it, slowly, carefully. The warmth settles into your skin, easing the tension that has built from the cold outside. It is a quiet relief, one that does not demand attention, but offers comfort nonetheless. You hold your hands there for a moment, then draw them back. Conserving heat is important. you begin to understand that even comfort must be measured. Some scholars continue to question how evenly warmth was distributed within these homes, suggesting that areas closer to the hearth or heated surfaces were significantly warmer than others, creating zones of comfort that influenced where people sat, worked, and slept. You can see how that might shape daily life. You shift your position slightly, noticing how the warmth changes with distance. A few steps away, the air cools again, reminding you that this balance is delicate. You listen. The sounds inside are different from those outside. They are softer, more contained. The crackle of the fire is steady, a gentle rhythm that fills the space without overwhelming it. There is a faint rustle of movement, the subtle sound of fabric brushing against itself, of quiet activity, continuing without interruption. It feels calm, contained, intentional. You glance toward the doorway where a thin line of light marks the boundary between inside and outside. The cold remains there, waiting present but held at bay. For now, you walk along the interior, observing how the walls curve slightly at the corners, softening the edges of the space. This reduces airflow, limits drafts, and helps maintain a more stable environment. Even the shape of the room matters. You pause near a storage area where woven baskets sit stacked carefully. You lift the lid of one slightly and catch the scent of dried grains, faint but distinct. It is a reminder that warmth alone is not enough. Food must be preserved, protected, and rationed with care. Everything works together. Walls, fire, food, movement. You replace the lid gently and step back, aware that even small disruptions could affect the balance within this space. You take a slow breath, noticing how the air feels different here. It is not fresh in the way the outside air is, but it is stable, consistent, shaped by the environment rather than exposed to it. You feel your body responding, relaxing slightly, adjusting, adapting. This is what the home provides. Not luxury, not excess, but a controlled space where survival becomes manageable, where the harshness of the outside world is softened just enough to endure. You look around once more, taking in the details. The walls that hold the cold back, the fire that offers steady warmth, the carefully arranged tools and supplies, the quiet rhythm of life continuing within. You begin to understand that survival here is not about resisting winter completely. It is about creating a space where winter can be endured without overwhelming everything inside. It is a balance, fragile, maintained through effort. You move toward the doorway again, feeling the shift in temperature as you approach. The cold greets you once more, steady and unchanged, waiting just beyond the threshold. You pause, just for a moment, then step back outside, carrying with you a deeper understanding of how these homes do not fight the cold but shape it, guiding it, slowing it, turning it into something that can be lived with. And as you stand once more in the open air, you realize that what appears simple from the outside is in truth the result of countless careful decisions, each one layered into the walls themselves. You step deeper into the home, your attention drawn toward a raised platform that runs along one side of the room. At first glance, it appears to be a simple structure built from packed earth and brick, its surface smooth from years of use. But as you move closer, you notice something different, a quiet warmth. You sit down carefully, placing your hand against the surface. It is not hot, not even noticeably warm at first touch, but as your palm rests there, a gentle heat begins to reveal itself. It rises slowly, almost imperceptibly, yet steadily enough to soften the cold that lingers in your fingers. This is the kang. You shift your weight and sit fully upon it, feeling how the warmth spreads beneath you, reaching upward through layers of clothing. It does not overwhelm the body. Instead, it supports it, creating a stable pocket of heat that remains consistent over time. You exhale slowly. This changes everything. A commonly accepted understanding in studies of northern Chinese life is that the kang system played a central role in winter survival, functioning as both a bed and a heated platform connected to the home's fire system. Heat from the hearth travels through flues beneath the surface, warming the structure before exiting through a chimney. You glance toward the hearth and begin to trace the invisible path of heat. The fire burns quietly, its energy not wasted but directed, guided through channels hidden beneath the kang. It is a system of movement, not just of flame but of warmth itself. You lie back, slowly testing the surface with your full weight. The firmness supports your body while the gentle heat begins to settle along your back, easing the stiffness that has followed you since stepping outside. It is subtle, but deeply effective. The air in the room remains cool, yet your body feels different. You begin to understand how warmth does not need to fill the entire space to sustain you. It only needs to reach you where it matters most. You close your eyes for a brief moment. Listening, the fire continues its steady work, its faint crackle travelling through the structure softened as it moves beneath you. There is a quiet hum to it, almost like a distant rhythm, consistent and reassuring. You open your eyes again and sit up, running your hand along the edge of the kang. The material is smooth, worn by years of kandaka, shaped by countless hands and bodies that have relied on it. This is not just furniture, it is survival. In some accounts, passed down through regional traditions, families would adjust the flow of heat by controlling how the fire was fed, carefully managing the intensity so that the kang remained warm without consuming too much fuel. It required attention, a kind of quiet awareness that developed over time. You can imagine how easily imbalance could occur. Too much heat and fuel is fed, too little, and the coal begins to return. You shift your position slightly, noticing how different areas of the platform hold slightly different temperatures. Closer to where the heat enters, the warmth is more pronounced. Further along, it softens, fading gradually. You move your hand across these variations, feeling the transition. It is not uniform, but it is intentional. Some researchers continue to explore how widespread kang systems were across different regions and time periods, noting that variations in design materials and fuel sources influenced how effectively they retained heat. What remains consistent, however, is the principle itself. Heat must be guided. You sit quietly, letting the warmth settle into your body. Your shoulders relax. Your breathing slows, and the tension you carried from outside begins to ease. You notice something else. The room feels quieter here, more contained, as if the presence of the kang anchors the space-drawing activity toward it. Shaping how people gather, sit, rest, and sleep, it becomes the center of the home, not through decoration but through necessity. You imagine evenings spent here, families gathered together, sharing food, stories, and warmth. The cold remains outside, pressing against the walls, but inside this platform holds a steady resistance, a quiet defiance. You slide your feet onto the surface, tucking them beneath you, allowing the warmth to reach them more directly. The sensation is immediate, a gentle spreading heat that replaces the lingering chill. You did not realize how cold you were until now. You look toward the hearth again, noticing how carefully the fire is maintained. It's not large, not wasteful, but precise. Each piece of fuel is placed with intention, feeding the system just enough to sustain the flow of heat. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is excessive. This balance extends beyond the fire itself. It shapes how people move, how they rest, how they conserve their energy. The kang reduces the need for constant movement, allowing the body to remain still while staying warm. Stillness becomes an advantage. You run your hand along the surface once more, feeling its steady warmth, its quiet reliability. It does not change quickly. It does not fluctuate with every shift in the fire. It holds. It endures. There is something deeply reassuring in that. You take a slow breath, allowing the warmth to settle further into your body. The air still carries the faint scent of smoke and earth, but now it feels softer, less intrusive, as if the kang itself has altered your perception. You feel grounded, centered, sustained. You begin to understand that survival here is not only about resisting the cold, but about creating systems that work with it, that transform limited resources into lasting comfort. The kang is one such system. Quiet, unassuming, essential. You shift your position one final time, settling into a place where the warmth feels just right, neither too strong nor too faint. Your body responds naturally, adjusting without effort, finding balance within the space. And as you sit there, supported by both structure and heat, you realize that this simple platform carries with it generations of knowledge, each layer built upon the last, each improvement shaped by experience. You are not just sitting on a bed, you're resting within a solution. You rise slowly from the kang, carrying its lingering warmth with you. As you step back into the cooler air of the room, the difference is immediate, though not as jarring as before. Your body has changed slightly, holding onto the heat, extending its presence for a few quiet moments longer. It does not last forever, but it helps. You move toward a wooden stand where several garments are arranged with careful attention. At first glance, they appear simple, made from coarse fabric and muted tones. Yet as you reach out and touch them, you begin to understand their purpose more clearly. Layers. Always layers. You lift one piece and run your fingers across its surface. The outer fabric feels firm and slightly rough, designed to resist wind and wear. Beneath it, a softer lining rests against your palm, holding a faint trace of warmth from the room. You bring it closer. There is a subtle scent. Clean, dry, touched by smoke and storage. A commonly recognized insight from historical records is that layered clothing in ancient northern China was essential for managing body heat, allowing individuals to trap warm air close to the skin while adjusting to changes in activity and temperature. You begin to dress, one layer at a time. The first sits close to your body, light yet insulating, creating a base that holds warmth without restricting movement. The fabric brushes gently against your skin, soft enough to be comfortable, yet dense enough to serve a purpose. You add another layer, then another. Each one builds upon the last, creating small pockets of air between them. These pockets become barriers, slowing the movement of cold and preserving the heat your body produces. You pause, feeling the difference. It is not immediate warmth, but a growing sense of protection, a quiet assurance that the cold will reach you more slowly now. You pull a heavier outer garment around your shoulders, adjusting it carefully so that it overlaps at the front. The closure is simple, tied securely, minimizing gaps where cold air might enter. Small openings matter very much. You adjust the sleeves, ensuring they extend far enough to cover your wrists. You notice how easily heat escapes from exposed skin, how even a narrow gap can allow the cold to slip in unnoticed. You tuck the fabric closer, sealing yourself in. Some regional traditions include the use of padded garments filled with cotton or plant fibers stitched in patterns that prevent the filling from shifting. These designs create an even distribution of insulation, ensuring that no part of the body is left exposed to uneven cold. You trace your fingers along one such garment, noticing the stitching. It forms small repeated shapes across the surface, each one holding the inner material in place. It is precise, deliberate, quietly effective. You wrap a scarf around your neck, layering it loosely. At first, then adjusting it to sit closer against your skin. The warmth gathers quickly in that area, your breath softening the air trapped within the fabric. You inhale slowly. The scent of the cloth mixes with the air, faint but present, grounding you in the moment. You reach for a head covering next, placing it gently over your hair, ensuring that your ears are fully covered. The change is immediate. The cold that once touched that area disappears, replaced by a steady, contained warmth. You had not noticed it before. Now you do. You slip your hands into simple coverings, their interior slightly rough but insulating. You flex your fingers, feeling how the movement is restricted slightly yet protected. Function comes first. Comfort follows. There are accounts suggesting that some individuals would wear multiple pairs of garments, adjusting them throughout the day depending on activity. When working layers might be loosened or removed to prevent overheating, then replaced quickly once movement slowed. It is a constant balance. Too warm and moisture builds. Too cold and the body struggles. You shift your shoulders, testing the full set of clothing. It feels heavier yet more stable, as if your body is now wrapped in a protective shell that moves with you. You take a step forward, then another. The cold remains, but it reaches you differently now. Presses against the outer layers, slowed, softened, redirected. It no longer touches your skin directly, but must pass through each barrier you have created. Time becomes your ally. You pause near the doorway, placing your hand against the wood. The surface feels cold beneath your palm, a reminder of what waits outside. You take a slow breath, feeling the warmth held within your layers, noticing how your body responds. Ready, prepared. You step outside. The air greets you again, sharp and clear, but this time it does not reach you in the same way. It brushes against your clothing, testing it, pressing lightly but finding resistance. You stand still for a moment, observing, listening. The sounds of the village continue steady and calm, woven into the fabric of daily life. Footsteps move along the path, voices carry softly through the air, and the faint crackle of distant fires blends into the background. You feel different within it now. Protected. Adapted. You walk forward, your movement slower but more deliberate, your body conserving energy without conscious effort. The layers you wear reduce the need for constant adjustment, allowing you to focus on what lies ahead. You notice others moving through the village, their clothing similarly layered, each person wrapped in variations of the same principle. No two sets are identical, yet all serve the same purpose: to hold warmth, to resist cold, to endure. You pass by one individual adjusting their outer garment, tightening it against the wind. The motion is quick, practice almost automatic, is not a reaction but a habit formed over time. You begin to understand. Clothing here is not simply worn, it is managed. You take another breath, feeling how the air moves through the small spaces around your face, your scarf softening its edge, your layers holding the rest at bay. It is not complete protection, but it is enough. You continue walking, aware that each layer you wear represents knowledge gained through experience. Each stitch, each fold, each adjustment shaped by the need to survive. And as you move through the cold wrapped in these quiet defences, you realise that warmth is not something given. It is something built. You continue along the narrow path, your steps steady, your body wrapped in carefully layered warmth. The cold still surrounds you, but it no longer feels like a direct challenge. It has become something you move through, something that exists alongside you rather than against you. Ahead you notice a cluster of homes standing closer together than the others. Their walls nearly touch, forming a tight arrangement that feels intentional. As you approach, the space between them narrows, and the wind that once brushed against your face begins to fade. The air becomes calmer, sheltered. You step into the space between the homes, and pause, noticing how the temperature feels slightly different here. It is not warmer in any dramatic sense, but it is less exposed. The sharpness of the wind is reduced, softened by the arrangement of the structures. You glance upward. The sky remains pale and distant, but the walls around you create a sense of enclosure, a quiet barrier that shields you from the full force of the open air. This is not accidental. A well-supported observation in the study of traditional northern settlements is that homes were often built in close proximity to reduce wind exposure, creating shared zones of protection that benefited everyone within the cluster. You can feel that shared protection now. You move forward and reach a small open area where several villagers are gathered. They sit or stand close together, their movements unhurried, their presence forming a quiet centre within the village. The space is not crowded, yet it feels full. You step closer, carefully. The sounds here are different from the rest of the village. Voices are low and steady, blending into a soft murmur that carries a sense of familiarity. There is no urgency in their tone, only a quiet exchange of thoughts, small updates, simple observations. You notice how close they stand to one another, not touching, but near, close enough that the warmth from their bodies contributes to the space they share. It is subtle, almost unnoticeable at first, but as you stand there you begin to sense it. A collective warmth. You remain at the edge of the group, observing how this closeness shapes the environment. The air feels slightly less cold, the space more stable, as if the presence of each person adds a small layer of resistance against the surrounding chill. It is a shared effort, even without words. There are accounts suggesting that during the coldest periods, families and sometimes even neighbours would gather into fewer rooms to conserve heat, reducing the need for multiple fires and concentrating warmth where it was most effective. You imagine how that might feel. More crowded, less private, but warmer, safer. You watch as one individual adjusts a piece of fabric around another's shoulders, pulling it closer and ensuring that no gap remains. The gesture is quiet, almost automatic, performed without hesitation. Care is a constant here. You notice how tasks are rarely done alone. Even simple actions such as preparing fuel or adjusting clothing often involve more than one person. It is not because the task requires it, but because presence itself offers something valuable. Support, stability, warmth. You shift your weight slightly, becoming more aware of your own position within the group. Your body begins to respond to the shared space, relaxing in ways that were not possible when you stood alone in the open air. You feel it in your shoulders, in your breath, in the way your hands no longer tense against the cold. Some researchers have explored the idea that communal living during winter months was not only practical but essential, suggesting that isolation increased risk while shared space improved both physical survival and emotional resilience. You can sense that truth here. It is not spoken, but it is present. You listen more closely to the voices around you, catching fragments of conversation. They are not discussing grand plans or distant concerns. The focus remains on the immediate, the tangible, the manageable. Fuel levels, food stores, small repairs. Each topic is approached with calm attention, as if the act of speaking about it helps maintain control over it. You notice how no one raises their voice. There is no need. The quiet carries enough weight. You take a slow breath, allowing the rhythm of the space to settle within you. The air feels different here, not because it has changed, but because the environment has been shaped around it. You begin to understand that survival is not only built through materials and structures, but through relationships, through proximity, through shared presence. It is not just about staying warm, it is about staying together. You glance toward the edges of the cluster where the wind occasionally finds its way through narrow gaps. It slips in briefly, brushing against the space before fading again. Even here the cold remains, but it is managed, reduced, contained. You shift your stance again, noticing how the ground beneath you feels slightly more worn, more compacted. This area has been used, often shaped by repeated gatherings, by countless moments of shared time. The land itself reflects it. You look at the faces around you, calm and focused, each person carrying their own understanding of what must be done, yet contributing to something larger without effort. There is no single leader here, no central command, only a shared awareness, a quiet agreement. You take another breath, feeling how your body has adapted once more, adjusting not only to the cold but to the presence of others, to the way space itself can be shaped by human connection. You realize that warmth is not only created by fire or fabric, it is also created by proximity, by cooperation, by the simple act of not facing the cold alone. You remain there for a moment longer, allowing the stillness to settle, the quiet to deepen, the shared warmth to linger. Then slowly you step back from the group, carrying that sense of connection with you as you return to the path. The cold meets you again, but it feels different now. Less absolute, less overwhelming, because you understand something you did not fully see before. Survival here is not an individual effort, it is a collective one. You leave the shelter of the clustered homes and follow a path that leads toward a quieter corner of the village. The air feels slightly sharper again as the wind finds you brushing lightly against your clothing, testing the layers you have so carefully arranged. This time you are ready. Ahead you notice a series of low structures partially set into the ground. Their shapes are modest, their surfaces blending with the earth around them as if they are meant to disappear rather than stand out. You step closer. The smell reaches you first. Faint, tang, layered with salt and thyme. You pause at the entrance of one storage pit, watching as a villager carefully lifts a wooden lid. A thin breath of cold air escapes, carrying with it the scent of preserved vegetables. It is sharp at first, then softens as it settles into the open air. You lean slightly forward, curious. Inside you see rows of jars and containers, each sealed with care. Some hold leafy greens that have been transformed by salt and thyme into something entirely different. Others contain grains dried and protected, waiting for the long weeks ahead. Food does not simply wait here, it endures. A broadly accepted finding in studies of early Chinese rural life shows that fermentation and drying were essential preservation methods, allowing vegetables like cabbage and mustard greens to remain edible throughout the coldest months. You reach down and lift one jar gently, feeling its weight, its cool surface pressing against your hands. The glass is smooth, slightly damp from the cold air inside the pit. You tilt it slightly, watching how the contents shift slowly within. There is patience in this process. Nothing rushed, nothing wasted. You set the jar back carefully and notice how each container is placed with intention. They are not stacked randomly, but arranged in a way that allows easy access, while protecting the contents from damage. Order again. Always order. You glance at the walls of the pit, noticing how they are lined with compacted earth and sometimes reinforced with simple materials. The structure holds a steady temperature shielded from the extremes above. The ground itself becomes a tool. You step back and close the lid gently, sealing the space once more. The scent fades quickly, leaving only a faint trace behind, as if the contents prefer to remain hidden until needed. You continue walking, and soon come across another area where strips of food hang suspended from wooden frames. They move slightly in the air, swaying with the faint breeze, their surfaces dry and firm. You reach out and touch one. It feels tough, light, almost brittle. These are dried meats and vegetables preserved by the removing moisture, making them resistant to spoilage. The process is simple yet highly effective, turning perishable food into something that can last for weeks or even months. You bring your hand closer to your face and notice the scent. Subtle, earthy, a hint of smoke. It's not strong, but it carries the memory of the process, the careful attention required to prepare it. Some lesser-known accounts suggest that certain regions added spices or herbs to their preserved foods not only to improve flavour but also to aid in preservation. These additions varied widely, reflecting local resources and traditions. You imagine the small variations from village to village, each community adapting the same principles in slightly different ways. You walk further and notice a group of villagers preparing food for storage. Their movements are steady, practiced, each action flowing into the next without hesitation. Vegetables are cut, salted, arranged and sealed with quiet efficiency. No movement is wasted. You stand nearby, observing how the process unfolds. Hands move with confidence, guided by repetition, by knowledge passed down through generations. There is no need for instruction here. Everything is known. You notice how the salt is applied carefully, not too much, not too little. The balance is important. Too little and the food may spoil. Too much and it becomes difficult to eat. Precision matters. You shift your weight slightly, feeling the ground beneath you still firm from the cold. The air carries a mix of scents, now salt earth, faint traces of fermentation, all blending into a quiet atmosphere of preparation. You take a slow breath. It feels steady, grounded. There are ongoing discussions among historians about how communities managed food shortages during particularly harsh winters, with some suggesting that shared storage and redistribution played a key role in preventing famine within tightly connected villages. You glance around and consider how that might work here. Nothing appears excessive. Nothing appears lacking. Everything seems measured. You begin to understand that food is not simply stored for individual use. It exists within a system, one that supports the group as a whole, ensuring that no single failure leads to complete loss. You notice a small basket placed near the edge of the area, filled with what appears to be less perfect produce, slightly bruised, uneven, not ideal for long storage. These will be used first, nothing wasted. You watch as one piece is taken, inspected, and set aside for immediate use. The decision is quick but thoughtful, part of a continuous process of evaluation and adjustment. You step back slightly, giving space to those working yet continuing to observe. The rhythm of preparation continues without interruption, steady and calm, reflecting the same quiet focus you have seen throughout the village. You feel your own body responding, slowing, matching the pace. There is no rush here, yet nothing is delayed. Every action is timed, balanced between urgency and patience, between effort and conservation. You glance once more at the storage pits, the hanging food, the careful hands at work, and begin to see how each element fits into a larger system. Preservation is not a single act. It is a continuous practice. You take another breath, noticing how the air feels slightly heavier. Here, shaped by the presence of food, by the processes taking place, by the quiet work that ensures survival in the weeks ahead. You turn slowly, preparing to move on, carrying with you a deeper understanding of how nourishment is secured, not through abundance, but through care, attention, and restraint. And as you step back onto the path, the cold greets you again, steady and unchanged. You realize that the food stored behind you represents more than sustenance. It represents time. Jit's time. Carefully extended, you continue along the path, your breath steady, your body held within the quiet protection of layered clothing. The village stretches gently around you, its rhythms now more familiar, its movements easier to follow. Yet as you walk, you begin to notice something missing. There is no visible water, no flowing stream, no open well, only stillness. You pause, listening, expecting perhaps the faint sound of moving water somewhere nearby. But there is nothing. The cold has taken it, transformed it, hidden it beneath a surface that no longer yields easily. Water has not disappeared. It has changed. You follow a narrow track that leads beyond the cluster of homes, your steps careful as the ground becomes slightly uneven. The frost here is thicker, the air more exposed, and the silence feels deeper. Then you hear it, a dull rhythmic sound. You move closer, drawn by the repetition, until you find a small group gathered around what appears to be a frozen surface. It could be a pond or a shallow well, its edges hardened and pale under the winter light. One person raises a tool and brings it down. The sound echoes. Solid. Measured. You watch as the surface begins to crack, small fractures spreading outward before a section breaks free. The piece is lifted aside, revealing dark water beneath, still and waiting. You step closer, carefully. The air here feels colder, sharper, as if the presence of the exposed water intensifies it. A faint mist rises, barely visible, blending into the surrounding air. You kneel slightly and reach out, touching the edge of the opening. The ice is smooth, unforgiving. You pull your hand back quickly, aware of how quickly the cold can travel through direct contact. A commonly understood aspect of winter life in northern regions is that access to liquid water becomes a daily task, requiring effort and consistency as natural sources freeze over. You watch as a container is lowered into the opening, the movement steady and controlled. The water is drawn up slowly, then transferred into larger vessels, each one filled with care. No drop is wasted. You notice how the containers are covered immediately, protected from the air, from the cold, from contamination. The process is efficient, practiced, and repeated without hesitation. You stand and observe the ground around the opening. It is worn slightly darker, shaped by repeated visits. This is not a rare activity. It is daily. You take a slow breath, feeling the cold air fill your lungs sharper here than before. The scent is different as well, faintly mineral, touched by the presence of water beneath the surface. You follow as one of the filled containers is carried back toward the village. The movement is careful, deliberate, each step placed with attention to balance and stability. Spilling water here matters very much. You walk alongside, noticing how the container is held close to the body, minimizing exposure to the air. The warmth of the person carrying it may slow the freezing, even if only slightly. Every small advantage counts. There are accounts suggesting that in some areas villagers would store water indoors or in insulated spaces to prevent it from freezing completely, sometimes placing it near heat sources or covering it with materials that slowed the loss of warmth. You imagine the challenge: water that must remain liquid, in a world determined to solidify it. You return to the village and step inside one of the homes once more. Near the hearth you see a container placed carefully to one side. Steam rises faintly from its surface, a soft, almost invisible signal that the water is being warmed. You move closer. The warmth is gentle, subtle. You place your hand near the container, feeling the slight change in air temperature. It is not enough to heat the room, but enough to maintain the water in a usable state. You listen. The faint sound of water shifting within the container reaches you, a quiet movement that feels almost out of place in the stillness of winter. You had not realized how rare it is. Now you do. You step back and observe how the container is positioned, not too close to the fire, not too far. The balance must be maintained. Too much heat and the water may evaporate or become difficult to manage. Too little and it will freeze again. Control is constant. You step outside once more, your mind lingering on the effort required to maintain something so basic. Water, something that flows freely in other seasons, now demands attention, labor, and care. You walk along the path and notice small traces of ice forming in unexpected places. Thin layers along the edges of containers, faint crystals forming where moisture has settled and frozen. You reach out and touch one. It crumbles easily, fragile, temporary. You begin to understand that water in winter exists in a delicate state, constantly shifting between forms requiring vigilance to remain useful. You glance back toward the frozen source, now partially covered again, the opening protected after use. It will be returned to later opened again, the process repeated. Day after day, you take a slow breath, feeling the cold air settle around you, your layers holding it at a distance. Your body remains steady, but your awareness has shifted. Water is no longer invisible. It is central. You continue walking your steps, measured your mind tracing the path from frozen surface to container, from container to hearth, from hearth to daily use. Each step matters. Each action connects. You realize that survival here depends not only on warmth and food, but on the ability to maintain access to what lies beneath the ice, to draw it out, to protect it, to use it wisely. You pause for a moment, looking out across the village, its quiet activity continuing without interruption. The cold remains, unchanged, but within it, life continues to move, to adapt, to find ways to sustain itself. And as you stand there, you understand that even something as simple as water becomes a daily act of resilience, shaped by effort, guided by knowledge, and held together by the quiet determination to endure. You move along the outer edge of the village, where the homes give way to open ground and the wind regains its full strength. It meets you again with a steady pressure brushing against your clothing, searching for any weakness it can find. This is where fuel begins. You see it gathered in careful stacks, arranged with a quiet precision that reflects both scarcity and importance. Bundles of wood, dried stalks, and compacted materials sit in orderly rows, each one representing stored warmth for days yet to come. You step closer. The scent reaches you first. Dry wood, faint earth, a trace of oak lingering from earlier use. You kneel beside one of the stacks and pick up a piece of firewood. It feels light in your hands, lighter than you expected, its surface dry and slightly rough. You run your fingers along its grain, noticing small cracks that have formed as it lost moisture. This dryness is essential. A well-established insight from studies of pre-modern rural China is that properly dried fuel burned more efficiently, producing greater heat with less smoke, making it especially valuable during winter, when ventilation was limited. You set the piece back carefully and look at the arrangement of the stack. Each log is placed in a way that allows air to pass between them, preventing moisture from building. The structure is stable yet open, designed to preserve the quality of the material. Nothing is random. You stand and walk toward another pile, this one made of compacted plant matter. The pieces are shaped into small, dense forms, their surfaces smooth from handling. You pick one up. It feels firm, almost like packed earth. These are fuel cakes formed from agricultural remains such as straw or husks compressed to create a steady burning source. They are not as strong as wood, but they serve their purpose well, especially when wood is limited. You bring it closer to your face. The scent is subtle, dry, faintly organic. It carries no sharpness, only a quiet presence that reflects its origin. Some regional accounts describe how families would mix ash into these fuel cakes, improving their burn time and making use of what would otherwise be discarded. It is a small adjustment, yet one that extends the usefulness of each resource. You place the piece back and continue walking, your attention drawn to the way these materials are protected. Many stacks are covered, shielded from snow and moisture, their surfaces angled to allow any precipitation to slide away. Protection is constant. You notice how some stacks are positioned closer to homes while others are kept at a distance. The closer ones are likely for immediate use, while the others serve as reserves, untouched unless necessary. You begin to see the system: usage, storage, reserve, each level carefully maintained. You take a slow breath, feeling the cold air move through your scarf, softened, but still present. The wind here is stronger, more direct, carrying with it a faint whistle as it passes through gaps in the landscape. You pull your clothing closer, instinctively. There are ongoing discussions among historians about how communities managed fuel shortages during particularly harsh winters, with some suggesting that careful rationing and shared access prevented complete depletion of resources. You can imagine how that might unfold. Each fire monitored, each piece of fuel considered. Nothing burned without thought. You walk toward a small clearing where a few villagers are working together. One splits wood with steady, controlled movements, while another gathers the pieces and arranges them into smaller bundles. The rhythm is calm, consistent, and consistent. The sound of wood splitting carries through the air, sharp but not jarring, followed by the softer sound of pieces being placed into stacks. You watch for a moment. The motion repeats, again and again. Each strike measured, each result used immediately. You notice how no fragment is left behind. Even the smallest pieces are collected, set aside for kindling or for use in moments when larger fuel is not necessary. Everything has value. You step closer and feel the ground beneath your feet compacted from repeated activity. This is a place of work shaped by effort, marked by time. You glance at the tools being used, simple in design yet effective. They show signs of wear, edges, smoothed handles shaped by countless hands. These tools have endured, just like the people who use them. You take another breath, noticing how the scent of fresh-cut wood mixes with the cold air, creating a faint contrast between the living material and the frozen environment around it. It is subtle, but noticeable. You watch as a bundle is lifted and carried toward a nearby home. The movement is steady, the weight balanced carefully to avoid strain. Energy must be conserved even during work. Every action is measured. The mere certain measured. You begin to understand that fuel is not simply gathered, it is managed, tracked, protected, used with care. Care. You step back slightly, giving space to those working yet continuing to observe the quiet system in motion. The village depends on these materials, not in a dramatic way, but in a constant one. Fire must continue, warmth must remain. You glance toward the horizon where the pale light of the sun offers little assistance. Its presence is steady yet distant, unable to provide the heat that is needed. That responsibility falls elsewhere. You look again at the stacks of fuel, at the careful arrangement of the protection from the elements, and realize how each piece represents time, effort, and foresight. You feel a quiet respect, deepening. You take one final breath, letting the cold air settle around you, your layers holding it back just enough to remain comfortable. Then you turn and walk back toward the village, carrying with you a clearer understanding of how something as simple as fuel becomes one of the most important elements of survival. Not because it is rare, but because it is finite. And as you step once more into the rhythm of the village, you know that every fire you see, every warmth you feel is the result of countless small decisions made long before the cold arrived. You return to the heart of the village as the light begins to fade, not suddenly, but with a slow and steady dimming that settles across the land. The sky shifts from pale brightness to a muted grey, and then gradually toward deeper tones that signal the arrival of night. It happens quietly, almost unnoticed. You pause and look upward, watching how the last traces of daylight linger at the horizon before slipping away. The sun offers no lingering warmth, only a fading presence that leaves the air feeling even sharper than before. The cold deepens. You feel it immediately, a subtle tightening against your clothing, a firmer pressure against your face. The protection you carry still holds, but the environment has shifted again. Night changes everything. You step forward, your pace slower. Now your movements more deliberate. The ground beneath your feet feels harder, the frost thicker, each step producing a clearer sound that carries further in the quiet. The village begins to transform. Doors close, voices soften, movements become more contained. You notice how people withdraw into their homes not out of fear but out of necessity. The warmth inside must be preserved and the cold outside becomes something to avoid rather than endure. You approach one of the homes and see the faint glow of firelight through a small opening. It flickers gently, casting soft shadows that move across the surface, hinting at life within. You step inside. The warmth greets you again, familiar now, though still modest. The air feels thicker, holding traces of heat that have been carefully maintained. The scent of smoke lingers mixed with the quiet presence of food and earth. You move toward the kang and sit, allowing the stored warmth to reach you once more. It rises slowly, steady and reliable, easing the tension that has built in your body as the cold intensified outside. You exhale, long, soft. A commonly observed pattern in historical accounts of northern Chinese life is that winter nights were often spent in close proximity to heat sources, with families gathering on or near the kang to conserve warmth and reduce the need for additional fuel. You can see how this shapes the evening. The space feels smaller now, not physically, but in how it is used. Movement is reduced, positions are fixed, and attention turns inward. The outside world fades, replaced by the contained environment of the home. You listen. The sounds are gentle. The crackle of the fire, the faint shift of fabric, the quiet rhythm of breathing. Nothing is loud. Nothing's wasted. You adjust your position slightly, noticing how the warmth beneath you remains constant, unaffected by the cooling air above. It creates a stable foundation, allowing your body to rest without losing heat too quickly. You draw your feet closer, tucking them in, holding the warmth. Some lesser-known observations suggest that families often followed patterns of segmented sleep during long winter nights, waking briefly to tend fires or adjust coverings before returning to rest. It was not a single uninterrupted period, but a rhythm shaped by necessity. You imagine how that might feel, waking in the dark, checking the fire, listening to the quiet, then settling again. You glance toward the hearth where the fire burns low, carefully maintained to last through the night without consuming too much fuel. Each piece added is considered measure part of a larger balance that must be preserved. Too much and supplies diminish. Too little and the cold returns. You notice how the room feels different now compared to the day. The absence of movement has changed the air, making it feel stiller, more contained, as if time itself has slowed. You take a slow breath. The air feels dull. Warm near the kang, cool near the walls. You shift your hand slightly, feeling the difference in temperature across the space. It is not uniform, but it is predictable, allowing you to adjust your position accordingly. You begin to understand how night is not simply a period of rest. It is a period of management. There are ongoing discussions among scholars about how psychological resilience played a role in enduring long winter nights, suggesting that routine shared presence and controlled environments helped reduce the mental strain of extended darkness. You can feel that effect here. The structure of the space, the rhythm of activity, the quiet presence of others. It all contributes to a sense of stability. You lean back slightly, letting your body settle more fully onto the kang. The warmth continues to rise steady and unchanging, creating a small area where the cold cannot reach you directly. You close your eyes for a moment, listening. The fire continues. The air remains still. The world outside fades further. You open your eyes again and glance toward the doorway. It remains closed, sealed, holding the boundary between the inside and the outside. Beyond it, the cold deepens, unseen, unchanging. You take another breath, slower this time, allowing your body to relax further to conserve energy to prepare for the long stretch of night ahead. You realize that darkness here is not empty. It is full of quiet actions, full of careful adjustments, full of awareness. You shift your position one final time, finding a place where the warmth feels balanced, where your body can remain still without discomfort. You feel it, a sense of containment containment, of endurance, of quiet survival, and as the night settles fully around the village, you understand that these hours long and silent are not simply endured. They are managed carefully, patiently, together. You remain within the quiet of the home for a while, letting the steady warmth of the kang settle into your body. The fire continues its slow work. The air remains still and the night deepens beyond the walls. Then gradually you notice something else, a sound, soft, rhythmic. You open your eyes and listen more closely. It is not the fire nor the movement of people, but something heavier, more grounded. A low shift followed by a faint exhale that carries a hint of warmth with it. You turn your head slightly. In the corner of the room near the far wall there is movement. You sit up, your curiosity returning, and look more carefully. A small animal, likely a goat or pig, rests within a designated space, its body curled inward, its breath visible in faint, slow patterns. You had not noticed it before. Now you cannot ignore it. The presence feels unusual at first, yet as you observe it begins to make sense. The animal is not here by accident. Its position is deliberate, its placement part of the larger system that shapes this environment. A widely recognized pattern in traditional rural life shows that livestock were often kept close to human living spaces during winter, not only for protection but also because their body heat contributed to the overall warmth of the home. You shift your position slightly, watching how the animal remains calm, its breathing steady, its body relaxed despite the cold outside. It does not move much, conserving its energy just as you have learned to do. You notice how its presence changes the air, subtly. The warmth is not strong, but it is there a quiet addition to the environment, blending with the heat from the kang and the fire. It creates a layered effect where multiple small sources combine to produce something more stable. You lean forward slightly, observing the space where the animal rests. The ground is prepared lined with dry material that provides both comfort and insulation. It absorbs moisture, reduces cold contact, and helps maintain a cleaner environment. Even here, preparation continues. Some regional practices suggest that animals were positioned strategically within or near homes to maximize their contribution to warmth while minimizing disruption to human space. It required balance and understanding of both comfort and necessity. You can see how carefully that balance is maintained. The animal is close, but not intrusive, present, but contained. You listen again to its breathing, noticing how it blends into the overall rhythm of the room. The fire crackles softly, fabric shifts gently, and now this steady living sound adds another layer to the quiet. It feels different, more complete. You draw your hands closer to your body, feeling the warmth held within your layers, and glance once more at the animal. Its presence is calm, unbothered, as if it has always belonged here. You begin to understand. Warmth comes from many places. You shift your gaze toward the walls, imagining how the cold presses against them from outside, how it attempts to enter, to spread, to take hold. Yet inside, small defenses accumulate. Walls, fire, kang, clothing, and now living bodies. Each one adds something. Each one reduces the impact of the cold. There are ongoing academic discussions about how the integration of livestock into domestic spaces influenced both survival and social structure, suggesting that these arrangements blurred the boundaries between human and animal life in ways that were both practical and deeply rooted in necessity. You consider that idea as you sit there. The separation between spaces is not as strict as it might be in other times or places. Here, survival shapes decisions more than comfort alone. You lean back slightly, allowing the warmth beneath you to continue its steady work. Your body feels heavier now, more relaxed, as if the combined heat of the room has begun to settle deeper into your muscles. You exhale slowly. The air leaves your lungs in a soft cloud that fades quickly in the dim light. You watch it disappear. Then you look again at the animal, noticing how its breath does the same rising and fading in a quiet rhythm that mirrors your own. You are not separate, not entirely. You share this space, this air, this effort to endure the cold that waits just beyond the walls. You shift your position slightly, adjusting your clothing, ensuring that no part of you is exposed unnecessarily. The habits you have observed throughout the village begin to feel natural now, almost instinctive. You cover, you conserve, you remain aware. You listen again, letting the sounds of the room settle around you. The fire continues, the animal breathes, and the quiet presence of others fills the space without interruption. It is not silent, but it is calm. You take another breath, slower this time, and allow your body to rest more fully against the warmth of the kang. The cold remains outside, steady and unchanged, but here within this space it has been reduced, shaped, managed. You begin to see how survival is not built from one solution alone, but from many small contributions, each one adding to the whole, even something as simple as shared warmth. You glance once more toward the animal, its body still, its presence steady, and realize that in this environment every source of heat matters. Every living being contributes, every detail is part of a larger system. You close your eyes briefly, letting the rhythm of the room carry you. The warmth holding you in place, the quiet surrounding you like a gentle barrier against the cold. And as you sit there, you understand that survival is not only about resisting what lies outside, but about gathering what lies within, shaping it, sharing it, and allowing it to sustain you through the longest nights. You remain seated for a while, letting the steady rhythm of the room settle deeper into your awareness. The warmth from the kang supports you. The faint presence of the animal lingers nearby, and the fire continues its quiet, measured work. Yet even within this carefully managed space, you begin to notice something else. A fragility. You shift slightly, becoming aware of a faint sound near the far side of the room. It is soft, almost easy to miss, a gentle clearing of the throat followed by a slow exhale that carries a hint of strain. You turn your head. Someone sits nearby, wrapped in layers, their posture slightly drawn inward. Their movements are slower, more deliberate, as if each action requires a bit more effort than usual. You watch quietly. The air around them feels the same as before, yet their presence changes the atmosphere. There is a subtle tension now, a quiet awareness that something is not quite right. Illness moves differently in winter. It does not arrive loudly. It settles. A well-documented observation in studies of early rural life is that cold weather often weakened the body's resistance, making respiratory illness and fatigue more common during prolonged winters. You can see how that might unfold here. The cold presses constantly, the air remains dry, and the body must work harder to maintain balance. Even small imbalances can grow over time. You shift your position slightly, your attention focused on the small actions taking place. A bowl is prepared, steam rising faintly from its surface. The scent reaches you slowly. Herbal, warm, grounded. You lean forward just enough to notice the contents. It appears to be a mixture of roots and leaves steeped in hot water, their properties drawn out through careful preparation. You inhale gently. The scent is calming, subtle, yet purposeful. There are records indicating that traditional remedies in ancient China often relied on locally available herbs used to support the body during illness, ease discomfort, and restore balance rather than simply eliminate symptoms. You watch as the bowl is offered, held carefully, both hands supporting it to preserve its warmth. The person receiving it accepts it slowly, bringing it closer, allowing the steam to rise toward their face. They pause, then sip. The motion is slow, controlled, as if each action must be measured to avoid wasting energy. You notice how the room adjusts around them. Movements become quieter, more attentive. The fire is tended with greater care, the space kept stable, the warmth maintained as consistently as possible. Attention shifts, subtly. Some lesser-known traditions describe the use of warming stones or heated cloths placed near the body to provide additional comfort during illness, helping to maintain heat in areas where circulation may have weakened. You imagine how that might feel. A small, steady warmth. Focused, supportive. You glance toward the hearth and notice a stone resting near its edge, absorbing heat slowly. It is not yet in use, but its purpose is clear. It will be moved when needed, placed where warmth is most required. You begin to understand. Care here is quiet, intentional. You take a slow breath, noticing how the air feels slightly heavier, now shaped by the presence of steam, by the subtle shift in attention, by the awareness that even within this controlled environment, the body remains vulnerable. You watch as another layer is adjusted around the person, the fabric pulled closer, sealing in warmth, reducing exposure. The movement is gentle practice performed without hesitation. There is no panic, only response. You feel your own body respond, your awareness. Opening your movements, becoming even more deliberate. You adjust your own clothing slightly, ensuring that no gap remains, that no warmth is lost unnecessarily. You are learning, without instruction. There are ongoing discussions among scholars about how traditional knowledge systems balanced observation and practice, suggesting that many remedies evolved through repeated experience rather than formal study. You can see how that might be true. Nothing here feels experimental. Everything feels known. You shift your gaze once more, watching how the person settles slightly. After drinking, their breathing becoming steadier, their posture easing just enough to suggest a small improvement. It is not a cure, but it helps. You listen closely. The room returns gradually to its earlier rhythm. The fire continues, the animal remains still, and the quiet presence of others fills the space once more. Yet something has changed. You feel it. A deeper awareness, a recognition that survival is not only about managing the environment, but about supporting the body within it, responding to its needs, adjusting when it falters. You take another breath, slower this time, letting the air settle within you, noticing how your own body feels, how it responds to the warmth, to the stillness, to the quiet. You understand now, strength here is not constant. It shifts. It requires care. You lean back slightly, allowing the warmth of the kang to support you once more, your body settling into its steady presence. The cold remains outside, unchanged, but inside the balance continues, shaped not only by structure and preparation, but by attention, by care, by the quiet effort to maintain well-being in a season that offers little forgiveness. You close your eyes briefly, letting the rhythm of the room carry you once more, the gentle warmth holding you in place, the soft sounds surrounding you. And as you sit there, you realize that survival is not only about enduring the cold, it's also about tending to each other. You wake up into a quieter kind of morning, one shaped not by urgency but by steady continuation. The light returns, slowly filtering into the room in soft tones that reveal familiar shapes once more. The fire has been tended through the night, its presence now gentle, its warmth still lingering beneath you. You sit up, carefully. Your body feels different today, not weaker but more aware. Each movement carries a sense of intention, as if you have learned something from the cold that now stays with you. Across the room you notice smaller figures already awake. Children. They move with a kind of quiet energy, not hurried, not careless, but responsive to the space around them. Their motions are light, their steps measured, their awareness sharper than you might expect. You watch them, closely. They approach the edge of the kang, reaching out to warm their hands briefly before stepping back. The motion is quick, practiced, as if they understand instinctively that warmth must be shared, not held too long by any one person. They take turns, without being told. A widely accepted observation in studies of traditional rural life is that children in such environments learned survival skills early, not through formal teaching, but through daily participation in the routines that sustained the household. You can see that learning happening here, not in words, but in action. One child adjusts a loose layer around their shoulders, pulling it closer, securing it against the cold that still lingers in the air. Another moves toward a small bundle of materials, gathering pieces of kindling and placing them near the hearth with careful attention. No movement is wasted. You notice how their clothing mirrors that of the adults, layered and functional, though slightly smaller, slightly more worn. The fabrics carry the same purpose, the same quiet defense against the cold. They do not resist it. They adapt to it. You shift your position and observe how they move through the space, avoiding unnecessary contact with colder surfaces, staying close to areas where warmth is more stable. They know where to stand, where to sit, where to pause. Some lesser-known accounts suggest that children often played games that reflected the environment around them, turning daily survival tasks into forms of practice, reinforcing skills through repetition in ways that felt natural rather than forced. You can imagine how that might unfold. Learning through play, through imitation, through quiet observation. You watch as one child steps toward the doorway, opening it just slightly before closing it again. The motion is brief, controlled, minimizing the loss of heat while still allowing a glimpse of the outside. Curiosity remains, even in winter. You feel a faint shift in the air as the door opens, a quick brush of cold that fades as soon as it arrives. The child reacts immediately, stepping back, adjusting their clothing, sealing the space once more. The response is instinctive. Learned, you take a slow breath, noticing how your own body mirrors these adjustments. How you too have begun to respond without thinking, guided by the same quiet awareness. You are learning as well. There are ongoing discussions among historians about how early exposure to environmental challenges shaped resilience in younger members of these communities, suggesting that such experiences fostered both physical endurance and mental adaptability. You can sense that resilience here in the way the children move, in the way they observe, in the way they participate. You watch as they gather near the kang once more, sitting briefly sharing its warmth, before rising again. The pattern repeats, each action small yet meaningful, each moment contributing to their understanding of how to exist within this environment. They do not linger. They do not waste. They move. You notice how their expressions remain calm, focused without complaint or hesitation. The cold is not something they questioned, it is simply part of their world. You feel a quiet respect, growing. You shift your gaze toward the hearth, where one child carefully adds a small piece of fuel, placing it with precision, ensuring that the fire continues without excess. The motion is deliberate, guided by observation rather than instruction. They have seen this before, many times. You listen as the fire responds, its soft crackle continuing, its warmth maintained. The room remains stable, the balance preserved. You glance back at the children, noticing how they begin to assist with other small tasks, adjusting materials, organizing space, contributing in ways that seem effortless. They are not separate from the system. They are part of it. You take another breath, feeling the warmth beneath you, the cool air above the steady rhythm of the room, continuing without interruption. You begin to understand that survival here is not taught in moments, but absorbed over time, woven into daily life, passed from one generation to the next without the need for explanation. You watch as one child pauses, looking toward the window, their gaze lingering for a moment before returning to the tasks at hand. Even now, they are aware. You shift your position slightly, letting the warmth settle deeper into your body, your awareness expanding to include not just the space, but the people within it, their roles, their movements, their quiet contributions. You realize that endurance is not something that appears suddenly. It is built slowly, carefully, over time. You close your eyes briefly, listening to the soft sounds around you, the fire, the movement, the quiet presence of life continuing despite the cold that remains outside. And as you open them again, you understand that the future of this village rests not only in its structures and systems, but in these small, steady hands that have already begun to learn how to survive. You step outside once more, the door closing gently behind you, sealing in the warmth you leave behind. The cold greets you again, steady and unkind, yet now it feels familiar, almost expected, like a presence you have learned to move alongside. The morning has fully settled. Light spreads across the village in a soft, even tone, revealing movement that never truly stopped. You begin to notice it more clearly now. Work continues. Always. You walk along the path, your steps measured, your breath slow and steady. The ground remains firm beneath your feet, each movement producing that faint, crisp sound that has become part of the rhythm of this place. Ahead, you see a figure kneeling beside a wall, hands pressing fresh material into a small crack. The motion is careful, deliberate, repeated, until the gap is sealed completely. You pause to watch. The repair is small, but necessary. A well-supported insight from historical observations is that maintenance during winter was constant, as even minor damage to homes could allow cold air to enter and disrupt the delicate balance of warmth inside. You step closer and notice the texture of the material being used. It is a mixture of earth and fibres pressed firmly into place, then smoothed with steady hands. The scent rises, faintly grounding and familiar. You reach out and touch the wall beside the repair. It feels solid. Cool. Reliable. You move on, your attention drawn to another task nearby. A bundle of tools is being checked, each one examined for wear, adjusted if necessary, then returned to its place. Nothing is assumed to be ready. Everything is confirmed. You notice how even the smallest tools are treated with care, their edges maintained, their handles secured. A failure here, even a minor one, could make future tasks more difficult. Preparation does not end. It continues. You walk further and come across a narrow path being cleared of loose frost and debris. The work is slow, methodical, ensuring that the surface remains stable for walking. You take a step onto the cleared section. It feels more secure, more predictable. You understand immediately why this matters. A slip, a fall, an injury, any of these could disrupt the balance of daily life, making survival more difficult. Even walking requires tension. You glance toward the edge of the village where a small structure stands apart from the others. Smoke rises faintly from within, suggesting that work continues there as well. You approach, curious. Inside you find materials being sorted and prepared, items that may be needed in the coming days. The movements are steady, unhurried, yet precise. You watch quietly. Hands move, objects shift, nothing stops. Some lesser-known observations suggest that winter was often a time for repairing tools, preparing materials, and completing tasks that required less movement but sustained attention, ensuring readiness for the seasons ahead. You can see how that fits here. Work changes, but it does not disappear. You step back outside the cold meeting you once more, your layers holding it at a distance. The air feels sharper now, the light slightly brighter, yet still without warmth. You take a slow breath. The scent of smoke lingers. The faint trace of earth remains. You walk along the path, again noticing how the village maintains its rhythm. No one moves quickly, yet nothing is delayed. Each action flows into the next, creating a continuous pattern of effort. You begin to understand. Work here is not defined by urgency. It is defined by consistency. There are ongoing discussions among scholars about how labour patterns in winter differed from other seasons, with some suggesting that while physical intensity decreased, the importance of precision and maintenance increased significantly. You feel that shift now. The work is quieter, more focused, less visible, but no less important. You pass by another home where someone adjusts a door frame, ensuring that it closes tightly, sealing out the cold. The motion is simple, yet the result is meaningful. A better seal, less heat lost. You place your hand briefly against the door after it is closed. The difference is noticeable. You step back, your awareness growing, your understanding deepening. Every task you see, every small adjustment contributes to the larger goal of maintaining balance within the village. Nothing is isolated. Everything connects. You continue walking, your body moving with greater ease, now your mind more attuned to the patterns around you. The cold remains, but it no longer feels like an obstacle. It is a condition that shapes behavior, guides decisions, and influences every action. You pause for a moment, looking across the village as a whole. Smoke rises, people move, tasks continue. The scene feels calm, yet purposeful. You take another breath, letting it fill your lungs before releasing it slowly. The air remains sharp, but your body responds with quiet stability. You are part of this rhythm now, at least for this moment. You turn and begin to walk again, your steps steady, your awareness always focused, your understanding of survival expanding with each observation. And as you move through the village, you realize that endurance here is not defined by moments of strength, but by the willingness to continue to maintain, to adjust, even when the cold offers no relief. It is not dramatic, it is steady, and it never truly stops. You move more slowly, now your steps guided by a quiet awareness that has settled into you over time. The village continues its steady rhythm, yet something in the air feels different today. Not colder, but deeper. You notice it in the way people speak, their voices slightly softer, their pauses slightly longer. There is no visible urgency, yet there is a subtle attentiveness that shapes each interaction. You follow the path toward a small open space where a few villagers have gathered. They stand close, not in work, not in preparation, but in conversation that feels quieter than usual. You approach gently, listening. The words are simple, yet carry a tone that suggests something beyond the immediate. They speak of the cold, of the long nights, of the unseen forces that move through the season. You stand at the edge, your presence unnoticed, and allow the sound of their voices to settle around you. The wind shifts, light, almost absent. You feel a faint movement of air across your face, carrying with it the distant scent of ash and dry earth. It lingers for a moment, then fades, leaving the space still once more. You glance around. The village looks the same, yet feels different. In many traditional communities, winter was not only a physical challenge, but also a time shaped by belief where natural forces were often understood through stories of spirits, ancestors, or unseen energies that influenced the world. You begin to sense that layer here, not visible, but present. You watch as one person gestures toward the horizon, speaking softly, their tone calm yet reflective. The others listen without interruption, their expressions steady, their attention focused. There is no fear in their faces, only awareness. You shift your weight slightly, feeling the ground beneath you still firm, still shaped by the cold. The air remains sharp, yet carries a quiet stillness that feels almost deliberate. You take a slow breath. The silence deepens. Some lesser-known traditions describe how certain sounds or changes in the environment during winter were interpreted as signs, subtle indicators of shifting conditions or unseen influences that guided how people responded to the season. You imagine how those interpretations might form. A change in wind, a sudden stillness, a sound carried further than expected. You begin to notice more. The absence of birds, the quiet of distant fields, the way sound travels differently in the cold air, sharper, clearer, yet somehow more distant. You listen carefully. There is a depth to the silence that feels almost tangible, as if it holds something within it, something not easily named. You glance toward the homes, their walls standing steady, their surfaces unchanged, yet the space around them feels more enclosed, more contained. You realize that winter shapes not only the body but the mind. It narrows focus. It heightens awareness. It invites reflection. You watch as the small group begins to disperse their conversation, ending without conclusion, their movements returning to the steady rhythm of daily life. Nothing dramatic, nothing final. You remain where you are, your attention lingering on the quiet space they have left behind. You feel a shift within yourself, a deeper calm, a heightened sensitivity to the environment around you. There are ongoing discussions among scholars about how seasonal isolation influenced belief systems, suggesting that long periods of cold and darkness encouraged introspection and the development of narratives that helped communities understand and endure their environment. You can feel that influence here. It is subtle, but real. You take another breath, noticing how the air feels slightly heavier, not in temperature, but in presence. The space around you seems to hold more than before, as if the stillness itself carries weight. You close your eyes briefly, listening. The wind moves faintly. The village remains steady. The silence persists. You open your eyes again and look toward the path ahead. It stretches quietly, leading you back into the familiar movement of the village, yet now it feels layered with something more. Not visible, but sensed. You begin to walk, your steps slow, your awareness expanded. The cold remains unchanged, yet your perception of it has shifted, shaped not only by physical experience, but by the quiet understanding that there is more to this season than what can be touched. You pass by a home and pause briefly, placing your hand against its wall. It feels as it always has. Solid, cool, reliable. Yet even here within this structure you sense the same quiet presence, the same depth that has settled across the village. You remove your hand and continue walking, your breath steady, your body warm enough to endure, your mind now attuned to both the seen and the unseen. You realize that survival here is not only about managing resources or maintaining warmth. It is also about understanding the environment in all its forms, both physical and symbolic, and finding a way to exist within it without resistance. You take one final breath, letting it settle within you before stepping forward once more, carrying with you the quiet awareness that winter is not only endured, it is interpreted. You notice the change before you fully understand it. The village feels lighter today. Not warmer, not softer, but subtly lifted, as if something within the rhythm has shifted just enough to be felt. The movements around you carry a different tone, and the quiet work that once defined each moment now shares space with something else. Anticipation. You follow the sound of faint activity toward the center of the village. It is not loud, not disruptive, but layered small sounds gathering together into something more noticeable than usual. You step closer. The air carries a different scent. Warm food, cooked grain, a hint of sweetness you have not noticed before. You pause, breathing it in slowly. The smell feels comforting, almost unexpected against the sharpness of the cold. It lingers, drawing you forward. You see people gathered again, but this time their posture is different. They are not focused solely on work. There is a softness in their movements, a slight easing in the way they stand, the way they speak. Something is happening. You move closer, careful not to disturb the space, and observe, and as small preparations take shape. Simple items are arranged, food is shared, and the fire is tended with a slightly more generous hand. A widely observed feature of traditional life in northern China is that winter festivals and gatherings provided moments of relief from the constant demands of survival, offering both physical nourishment and emotional renewal. You can feel that shift now. It is not dramatic, but it is real. You watch as a bowl is passed from one person to another. Each receives it with both hands, holding it for a moment before taking a small portion. The movement is slow, respectful, shared. No one rushes. You notice how the food looks slightly different from what you have seen before. It is more carefully prepared, perhaps using ingredients that are not used every day, saved for moments like this. You lean slightly closer. The steam rises, soft, fragrant. It carries a warmth that feels deeper than the fire alone, as if it holds something of the effort that went into creating it. Some regional traditions describe how certain winter foods were prepared specifically for communal gatherings, using preserved ingredients in ways that created both nourishment and a sense of occasion. You can imagine how important that would be, not just to eat, but to share. You sit at the edge of the gathering, your body still wrapped in layers, your hands resting quietly in your lap. The warmth from nearby bodies and the fire blends together, creating a small pocket of comfort within the cold. You feel it, subtle, yet steady. You listen to the voices around you. They remain soft, but there is a change in tone. There is a hint of lightness, a gentle rise and fall that was not present before. Laughter, quiet, but real. You had not heard it before. Now you do. You take a slow breath, letting the sound settle within you. It changes the space, not by adding noise, but by shifting the atmosphere, making it feel less confined, less heavy. You notice how people sit slightly closer, how their movements are less rigid, how their attention turns not only to tasks but to each other. Connection deepens here. In these moments, there are continuing scholarly reflections on how seasonal festivals helped sustain morale during long winters, suggesting that these gatherings played a crucial role in maintaining social bonds and emotional resilience. You can sense that clearly. It's not just about celebration, it is about endurance. You watch as a small object is placed near the center of the space, perhaps symbolic, perhaps practical. It draws attention briefly, then becomes part of the background, its presence acknowledged without explanation. Meaning exists here, even if it is not spoken. You shift slightly, adjusting your position, allowing the warmth to reach you more fully. The cold remains beyond the edges of this space, but it feels distant for a moment, held back by the presence of shared activity. You take another breath. The scent of food remains, the warmth lingers, the voices continue. You realize that these moments are not separate from survival. They are part of it. You glance toward the doorway where the cold waits just beyond unchanged patient constant. It will return to the forefront soon enough. But not now. Now there is warmth. There is food. There is presence. You let your shoulders relax slightly. Your body settling into the space, your awareness, softening just enough to allow this moment to exist fully. You notice how time feels different here. Slower, more fluid, less defined by urgency. You understand that this is not a break from winter, but a way of moving through it, creating small spaces where the weight of the season can be eased, even if only briefly. You watch as the gathering continues, each person contributing in small ways, each action reinforcing the sense of shared experience. You feel it within yourself. A quiet shift, a gentle release. You take one final breath, letting the warmth settle. The sounds fade softly into the background, the moment imprint itself in your awareness. And as you sit there surrounded by quiet voices and steady warmth, you realize that survival is not only built on preparation and effort, it's also sustained by moments like this. Small, shared, enduring. You step away from the gathering, slowly carrying its warmth with you as you return to the quieter edges of the village. The air greets you again with its steady chill, yet something within you remains softened, as if the moment you left behind continues to linger. The village feels different here, more distant, more contained. You follow a narrow path that leads outward, where the homes grow fewer and the land begins to open. The wind moves more freely in this space, brushing across your clothing, pressing gently against your steps. You pause, looking outward. Beyond the village, the land stretches in pale tones. The ground hardened, the fields silent beneath a thin layer of frost. There are no clear paths extending far into the distance, no signs of frequent movement. Travel is limited, greatly. A broadly supported understanding among historians is that winter often reduced or completely halted travel between rural communities as snow, ice and cold conditions made long journeys dangerous and unpredictable. You can feel that isolation here, not as absence, but as presence. You take a slow breath, the cold air filling your lungs sharper in this open space. The silence feels deeper, less interrupted, as if the world beyond the village has paused. You listen. There is almost nothing. Nothing. No distant voices, no movement across the fields, only the faint sound of wind moving steadily across the frozen ground. You begin to understand how each village becomes its own world during this season, self-contained, reliant on what it has already prepared. You turn slightly, looking back toward the homes behind you. Smoke rises gently, thin lines drifting upward before dissolving into the pale sky. That smoke means life, warmth, continuity. You feel a quiet reassurance. You walk a few steps further outward, testing the ground beneath you. It feels firmer here, less worn, less shaped by repeated movement. Each step produces a clearer sound, echoing slightly in the open air. You stop again. There is a boundary here, not marked by walls, but by absence. You sense that beyond this point movement becomes risk, uncertainty grows, and the connection to the village weakens with each step. You remain where you are, observing. Some lesser-known observations suggest that winter travel, when necessary, was often planned with extreme care, sometimes guided by knowledge of landmarks, weather patterns, and the condition of the land rather than fixed paths. You imagine how difficult that must be. To navigate a world where familiar features are hidden beneath snow, where distance feels greater, where time moves differently. You glance once more across the fields, noticing how the light reflects off the surface, creating a faint brightness that contrasts with the stillness of the land. It is beautiful, but distant. You turn back towards the village and begin to walk your steps slower now, your awareness shaped by what you have seen. The homes grow larger as you approach their presence, more defined, more reassuring. You feel it, the return. There are ongoing scholarly considerations about how seasonal isolation influences community structure, suggesting that limited external contact strengthened internal bonds, making cooperation within the village even more essential. You can sense that clearly now. The closeness you observed earlier, the shared work, the quiet gatherings, all of it takes on greater meaning. You pass by the outermost homes, their walls standing firm, their doors closed, their interiors holding warmth that cannot be seen from the outside. You place your hand briefly against one wall as you pass. It feels as it always has. Solid, cool, steady. Yet now it represents more than shelter. It represents connection. You continue walking, your breath steady, your body moving with a quiet confidence that was not there when you first arrived. The cold remains, but it no longer feels like an unknown force. You understand its boundaries. You understand your own. You step back into the center of the village where the paths are more defined, where movement continues, where life carries on despite the isolation that surrounds it. You notice how the sounds return gradually. Footsteps, voices, the faint crackle of fire, each one grounding you once more. You take a slow breath, letting it settle within you, your awareness expanding to include both the quiet isolation beyond and the steady presence within. You realize that survival here depended not only on what is gathered or built, but on what is maintained within these boundaries, on the abilities to function without relying on what lies beyond. You glance once more toward the edge of the village where the open land begins, then return your gaze forward. You understand now. Winter does not just bring cold, it brings distance. And within that distance, the village becomes everything. You continue walking through the village, your step steady, your awareness quietly expanding with each moment. The patterns of daily life feel familiar now, almost predictable, yet something in the air reminds you that this environment never becomes entirely safe. It only becomes understood. You pause near a narrow passage between two homes, where the wind slips through with a sudden sharper force. It catches your clothing, briefly pressing against you with a chill that feels stronger than before. You react immediately, pulling your layers closer, sealing what you can. The sensation fades, but it leaves behind a quiet reminder. The cold is not constant. It changes. You step forward again, your attention sharp and your senses more alert. The ground beneath your feet feels firm yet uneven in places where frost has lifted small sections or where moisture has frozen into irregular shapes. You take a careful step, then another. A misstep here would be easy and costly. A commonly recognized observation in studies of cold climates is that injuries such as slips, falls, and frost-related damage posed serious risks, often more dangerous than the cold itself when they limited a person's ability to move or work. You feel that risk now. Not as fear, but as awareness. You move more deliberately, placing each step with intention, your body adjusting to the subtle variations in the ground. The rhythm of your movement slows, becoming more controlled, more precise. You notice others doing the same. No one rushes. No one moves carelessly. You pass by a section of roof where a thin layer of frost has formed along the edge. It glistens faintly in the light, beautiful for a moment, yet carrying the potential for something more. You look closer. The structure beneath appears solid, yet you understand how weight can accumulate, how snow and ice can press against materials over time. You imagine it, the gradual build, the unseen strain. Some lesser documented observations describe how heavy snow or ice accumulation could weaken structures, requiring constant monitoring and occasional clearing to prevent collapse. You can see why that would matter. You glance upward. Again, your eyes tracing the lines of the roof, noticing how it slopes, how it allows material to slide away, reducing the burden. Even design anticipates danger. You continue walking and feel a faint stiffness in your fingers despite the coverings you wear. It is subtle but noticeable, a slight resistance in movement that was not there before. You pause, Flex your hands. Slowly. The sensation eases, but only slightly. You understand what it means. Exposure builds over time. You bring your hands closer to your body, allowing the warmth held within your layers to reach them more effectively. The adjustment is small, yet it restores comfort, reminding you how quickly the body can lose heat when left unattended. You breathe in slowly. The air feels sharper, colder, as if the day itself has shifted again. There are ongoing academic discussions about how individuals recognized and responded to early signs of cold-related stress, suggesting that awareness and quick adjustment were essential in preventing more serious conditions. You can feel that principle at work within you now. You notice, you respond, you adapt. You continue walking your awareness, extending outward once more. The village remains steady, yet now you see it differently, not just as a system of survival, but as a space where risk is constantly managed. You pass by a small group clearing snow from a narrow section of roof, their movements careful, their tools used with precision. The work is slow, deliberate, ensuring that weight does not build beyond what the structure can hold. You watch for a moment, then move on. You notice how paths are maintained, how surfaces are cleared, how spaces are kept usable despite the conditions. Each action reduces risk, each effort contributes to the stability of the whole. Nothing is left to chance. You step carefully over a patch of ice, your foot sliding slightly before finding grip again. The moment is brief, but it sharpens your focus immediately. You steady yourself, pause, then continue. The lesson is clear. You move forward with greater care, your body responding instinctively, your movements guided by the understanding that even the smallest oversight can have consequences. You take another breath, feeling the cold air settle within you, your layers holding it at bay just enough to remain steady. You look around the village, once more noticing how everything you see reflects not only preparation but vigilance and ongoing awareness that does not fade even in moments of calm. You realize that survival here is not only about what has been built or stored, it is about what is watched, maintained, adjusted every day. You slow your steps slightly, allowing your awareness to settle into this understanding, your senses attuned to both the visible and the subtle. The cold remains, unchanging, yet within it life continues, guided by attention, shaped by experience, sustained by the quiet ability to recognize danger before it becomes something more. And as you move forward, you carry that awareness with you. Each step placed with care, each breath taken with intention, each moment shaped by the understanding that survival is not only about enduring the cold, it is about respecting it. You wake into a morning that feels slightly different though. At first you cannot name why. The air still carries its familiar chill. The walls remain steady and the fire continues its quiet work. Yet something has shifted. You sit up slowly, your breath rising in a soft cloud, and notice how the light enters the room. It feels a touch brighter, not stronger in warmth, but clearer, as if the darkness of the previous days has loosened its hold just enough to be noticed. It is subtle, but real. You move toward the doorway and open it carefully, allowing the outside air to meet you once more. The cold remains steady and sharp, yet it no longer feels as heavy as before. You step outside. The ground beneath your feet still holds its firmness, but as you walk, you sense a slight change in its surface. In certain places, the frost appears thinner, less rigid, as if it has begun to release its grip. You pause, looking down. The change is small, almost easy to miss, but it is there. A gradual softening. A widely accepted understanding in seasonal studies is that the transition out of deep winter often begins with minor, nearly invisible changes. Subtle shifts in light temperature and ground conditions that signal a slow return toward warmth. You can feel that transition beginning now. You lift your gaze towards the horizon. The sun sits in the sky with the same quiet presence, yet its light feels slightly more expansive, reaching further across the land. Not warming, but widening. You take a slow breath, noticing how the air feels a fraction less dense, less pressing against your chest. It is still cold, still demanding, yet it carries a faint suggestion of movement, of change. You begin to walk your steps steady, your awareness heightened by this subtle shift. The village continues its rhythm, but you notice how people respond differently today. Movements are the same, yet lighter. You pass by a group working near a wall. Their action steady, but their posture less rigid, their movements slightly more fluid. The difference is small yet noticeable once you are aware of it. You continue along the path and notice a thin line of moisture forming along the edge of a surface where ice once held firm. It glistens briefly in the light before settling again. You reach out and touch it. It is cold, but not solid. You withdraw your hand, aware of how this small change alters everything. Solid surfaces become uncertain, predictable ground becomes variable, and the balance shifts once more. Some lesser recorded observations describe how the transition period between winter and early spring could be as challenging as the coldest days, as melting and refreezing created unstable conditions that required renewed attention. You can understand that now. Stability changes. New risks emerge. You walk carefully, adjusting your steps, testing each surface before committing your weight. The confidence you built during the deep cold must now adapt to a different kind of uncertainty. You notice others doing the same. No one rushes. Awareness remains. There are continuing scholarly discussions about how communities recognize seasonal transitions, often relying on subtle environmental cues rather than fixed dates, adjusting their behavior based on observation rather than expectation. You feel that process unfolding around you. No one announces the change, yet everyone senses it. Yes, Sophie. You take another breath, letting the air settle within you, your body responding not just to temperature, but to the quality of the environment itself. You begin to notice small sounds returning. A faint drip, a slight shift in the ground, the soft movement of water where it begins to loosen from its frozen state. They are quiet, but present. You pause and listen, allowing these sounds to gather in your awareness. They feel almost unfamiliar after the long stillness of winter, yet they carry a sense of continuity, a reminder that change is always in motion. You glance toward the fields beyond the village. They remain pale and still, yet now they seem less distant, less sealed awake, as if they are preparing to return. You take a step forward, then another. Each movement feels slightly different, not easier, but altered, shaped by the gradual shift taking place beneath you. You realize that winter does not end all at once. It recedes, slowly, carefully. You walk through the village once more, observing how the same structures, the same paths, the same routines now exist within a changing environment. Walls still hold, fires still burn, clothing still protects, yet everything begins to adjust. You feel it within yourself as well. Your body remains cautious, your awareness still sharp, yet there is a faint easing, a subtle release that was not there before. You take one final breath, allowing it to fill your lungs fully before releasing it into the air. The vapor rises, then fades just as it has before. But now it seems to linger a fraction longer. You stand still for a moment, letting the scene settle around you. The village continuing its quiet life, the cold still present, yet no longer absolute. And as you look across the land, you understand that the hardest part has already passed, not through a single moment, but through countless small acts of endurance that have carried this place forward. The cold remains, but it is changing, and so are you. You remain standing for a quiet moment, holding the stillness of the morning as it unfolds around you. The light continues to widen across the village, softening edges, revealing familiar shapes with greater clarity than before. Nothing feels rushed, nothing feels forced. You take a slow breath and begin to walk your steps steady, your body carrying the quiet memory of everything you've observed. The cold is still present, yet it no longer feels like a force that defines the moment. It is simply there. You move along the path, passing the homes that have sheltered warmth, the spaces where fire has been carefully maintained, the places where people have gathered, worked and endured. Each one holds a story, not of struggle alone, but of continuity. A well-established conclusion in studies of traditional rural life suggests that survival in harsh climates was rarely the result of a single skill or invention, but rather the accumulation of many small consistent actions performed over time. You can see that clearer now. You feel it. You slow your pace slightly, allowing your awareness to settle into the details. The walls you once touched now seem more familiar, their surface is shaped by effort, their presence steady and reliable. You pass by a stack of fuel, each piece placed with intention. You notice the storage areas, their contents preserved through care and patience. You see the paths worn and maintained guiding movement through the village. Nothing stands alone. Everything connects. You take another breath, noticing how the air feels lighter than it once did, not warm, but less heavy, less pressing. The shift is subtle, yet it reflects something larger. Time has moved forward. You continue walking, your body responding naturally. Your steps aligned with the rhythm you have come to understand. The cold still shapes your movements, but it no longer feels unfamiliar. You have learned it. You glance toward one of the homes and see a door open briefly, a small release of warmth slipping into the air before being sealed again. The motion is quick practice, part of the ongoing balance that defines life here. You understand that balance now. There are lesser-known accounts suggesting that many of these practices were rarely written down, instead carried through memory, through repetition, through the quiet passing of knowledge from one person to another. You can see how that knowledge lives here, not in words, but in actions. You walk further, your attention expanding to include not just individual tasks, but the pattern they create together. Each movement, each adjustment, each decision contributes to something larger, a system, a rhythm, a way of life. There are ongoing reflections among scholars about how such systems developed over time, shaped by environment, necessity, and shared experience rather than formal design. You feel that truth in every step you take. Nothing here feels imposed. Everything feels grown. You pause once more, standing at the center of the village, allowing the full scene to settle into your awareness. The homes stand steady, the paths remain clear. The quiet movement of life continues without interruption. You close your eyes, just for a moment, listening. The faint crackle of fire, the soft movement of fabric, the distant shift of footsteps. You open your eyes, again carrying those sounds with you, letting them blend into the calm that surrounds you. You realize that what you have witnessed is not a single story, but a collection of moments, each one small, each one necessary, each one contributing to the whole. You take a final slow breath. The air feels steady, balanced. You begin to walk again, your steps gentle, your body at ease, your awareness softening as the need for constant attention begins to fade. The cold remains, but it no longer demands the same response. You feel it, a quiet release, a gentle easing. You move toward the edge of the village where the open land stretches outward once more. The fields still carry traces of frost, yet the light touches them differently now, hinting at the changes to come. You pause, looking outward, then back. You understand now. Survival here was never about a single moment of strength. It was built slowly, through repetition, through care, through quiet persistence. You take one last breath, letting it settle deeply within you. Your body relaxed, your mind calm, your awareness drifting gently away from the sharp focus it once held. The village continues behind you, steady, enduring, and you begin to let the details soften, the edges blur slightly. The sounds fade into a gentle background that no longer asks for your attention. You feel your shoulders loosen, your breath slow, your thoughts quiet. The cold becomes distant, the warmth becomes memory, and you carry with you the sense of a place where life continued not through force, but through balance, through understanding, through the simple act of continuing each day. You let that feeling settle, gently, naturally, until there is nothing left to hold. Only rest, only quiet, only the soft, steady rhythm of a world that endures even as you drift away from it. Sleep well.